I would be, kicking off the first panel for today, which has perhaps a title too provocative. We had a vision, cool, who cares? So we'll proceed with this panel, and the reason we put it as a first one is that, we all want the best for Latvia, and we are ready to work for it too. And then we draw a vision of a prosperous country where economic development is vibrant and growth opportunities are plentiful, but more often than not, something goes south and we are left clueless as to why we didn't reach our goals. So why bother creating a vision at all? And how do we make sure that if we create one, we actually achieve something?
Hi everyone. My name is Agnese and welcome to the very first panel of the day. Olga made already an introduction and mentioned that the topic might be a bit too provocative. Thank you, Olga. You helped me to come up with this title of the panel. Let's start with an introduction of the amazing speakers that we have today. We have Inese Andersone, head of Riga City Development Committee at the Riga City Council.
Hello.
We have Ernests Štāls, CEO and co-founder of StarWatcher.io. Līva Pērkone, partner at Helve and board member at TechChill. And Niparts, co-founder and CEO at Jeff. We just heard a presentation from Olga about the startup scene, how it currently looks like, and we can see that things are moving ahead, albeit a bit slowly, but some things are moving ahead. And we now have an important document on our hands, which is the economic transformation proposed by the Ministry of Economics. And just to outline once again quickly, their focus is on investment, talent, innovation, and on reduction of bureaucracy. And once you read the titles, you understand that, hey, this is all about startups as well. And now we also had the very first ecosystem workshop, which is a great start of how we can add conversation about startups to this whole strategy and vision. So this panel discussion will go from a broader topic about the whole vision, and then we'll kind of try to dive a bit deeper into specific things that we can improve on. But to start off, and this is a question to all of you panelists, what do you understand as a vision in the context of startups, and who should be building it, and why should we even care about having a vision? Inese, maybe you could kick it off.
Yes, hello, and thank you for organizing this amazing Startup Day. And definitely, vision, we all imagine that there's some kind of goal where we are heading towards, what we see ahead of us, that there's a lot of vibrant startup culture in Latvia and Riga, and we as an ecosystem, and I see Riga as an important part in the ecosystem, we are doing, each of us, the job to get at the goal or at the vision, what we foreseen. And I think as a Riga, if the question is who cares, I want to assure that Riga cares, and we are doing step by step our job to make the startup culture, startup ecosystem more and more vibrant. And I think we will do even more in the coming years. So I think for the vision to be in action, each of us need to understand the role, and time after time these kind of workshops shows where we have the kind of, which of the wheels doesn't work or which should be kind of oiled in a better way so that the ecosystem is moving forward. So I think vision is important, but as important is all players in ecosystem understanding their role and what they need to do on an everyday basis to move ahead.
Thank you, Ernest.
yesterday I had actually a pretty similar discussion with one company and I'm advising, and they are kind of product company, but they think in the terms of service. The client asks and then they develop something, and I asked, so what's the vision? And the different approach to this is, let's say Estonians have unicorns and we also should have a unicorns. That's not the vision, that's FOMO. Vision is actually having our own agenda, how the heck we want to develop things further, and then figuring that out. And that's a vision. We're like, okay, in 10 years we're going to be there. To achieve that, we have to do these actions. Now we have vision that here we go. But that's something where we make our own mind up rather than Estonians have unicorns, we also should have. That's FOMO.
I think that we think in terms not of a vision but of a common goal. I think all of us here are pretty clear deep down on what the common goal is. It's, at least for me, we want to live in a better, richer country that has more jobs, that has a bigger budget, has more opportunities, has better reputation. I think that's the end goal that doesn't need to be written down. We don't need to build out huge strategies around it. But at the same time, hope is not a strategy. We don't need a vision. I think we need more clear goals and metrics and a plan on how to achieve it. I think all of the people here are people who think that startups have a quite big role to play in achieving that vision of having a better, richer country. That's why we're here. That's why we were there at the workshop, because we think that's one of the ways on how to achieve that. But I think vision is not the problem. The plan on how to achieve that is, and here I agree with Ernests, we have to figure out how to play our own game.
Yes, so hi everybody. About vision, so if we kind of take a few steps back, what is vision? It is the wonderland where we want to be 7, 10, maybe 20 years in the future. And then you get that figured out, clearly defined, everybody who should be there has clear buy-in, and then you work backwards to break it down into strategic goals, KPIs, targets to reach, whatever. And as unfortunate as it is, in Latvia here and today, we still don't have vision for startup-driven, high-tech-driven development. And the way I see it, it's because we don't have this set as a priority at the state level. So there is no clear front-runner champion at the country level who is really driven and passionate about this. And in this way, it's been ups and downs and different experiences. I'm not sure if Raimons is still in the room, but at least from my personal experience, and I think Olga can agree, he's at least been this person from the state side who's been really committed and devoted his time and efforts to try to get there bit by bit. So my takeaway in this initial question would be we really need to keep doing what we are doing and then be more vocal and outspoken as an ecosystem. We have a good thing going right now at the very early stage, but this will only work at the level we want it to, and then we will achieve the success we're aiming for if it will be also with the equal level of drive from the state side, not just from the ecosystem players.
Thank you, Toms. And I think you're bringing up a very important point that from the ecosystem part, I don't think we lack sort of a vision. We do understand where we need to go and we have those points in mind. It's about how we can then find the right approach with the government side and be on the same page about what are the things that we have to work on. And government plays obviously a very huge role in this because they will be the ones nudging the day-to-day public sector employees at actually making things happen on a daily basis. And so this is also a wide question, but I do want to hear your thoughts on this. Let's start with Ernest, as you've been in the startup sector for what, 12 years now, I think. How do you feel? How has the perception of vision changed and evolved from the government perspective, kind of seeing day to day how we interact with them and actually working on changing things?
I cannot speak on government side.
But from the ecosystem side, how do you feel? What has been the change?
By the way, raise your hands. Who represents government here? Like Līva, Altum, like Ministry of Economics. Don't be shy. Well, I don't know. Yeah, they sometimes come to events.
So, by the way, for those who don't see in the back, not a single person raised their hand. So I guess that's. Oh, one person. Sorry, one person did raise their hand. Two. Do we have two? Do we have more?
It's not as bad then.
It's not that bad.
But no, in a way, we have been, at the very beginning, we really were looking to be really autonomous as a community, not going after public money, so we could be independent and can do whatever the heck we want. And that helped. But startups always are fun because they are young people doing crazy stuff, and that just is a very good PR. And so government also have been interested in like being at events, and as I also have been part of TechChill team, then there's always someone who wants to be on stage. Like a couple months before the event, there's some people from certain places ask like, can the guy or woman can go on the stage? But there has been interest, and there have been several things what we have done good with the government back in the days. The soft loan program was something which was really good. That's the rare case where Estonians were jealous for that. So they said, damn, we don't have that kind of support from government. So that was good. We have managed to push through the startup law, so that's good. There are also option plans. So there is work going on. But if we look at the bigger game, those are peanuts still. Like there was this big discussion like, oh, we should give startup community 400K, but actually you will get 200K. it's like, and I liked how the Domburs basically said, what are we talking about? Those are like 200K. It's peanuts for the big budget. Like, why the heck there's even this kind of discussion? As Toms mentioned, we have people in the government who are interested helping startups, who are interested and they understand the playing field. But we lack someone who is pretty high up and would be an internal champion. Someone who is really like, heck no, we need to support startups because economy needs new blood, new businesses growing up. It just makes sense, so let's do that. And we don't have this. It could be called lobby, but I don't know. We just need someone who is our own Ilves. Back in the day was for Estonia like that, but we need someone who is passionate.
Fair. Before I bring up the next question, since it was brought up before, and Ernest, you brought up it as well, soft loan, for those who don't know, it's basically a very easy loan for startups because for the first couple of years when you get a loan you don't have to pay interest, and after that you only start to pay interest. So it's very, very flexible and very good for startups who don't yet have initial revenue. That's the side note. But back to the topic of internal champions, which is a crucial thing, and I think it's a good question for Inese, as I believe one of the champions for the startup ecosystem. You've been in the Riga City Council for basically almost 3 years now, and you've had a strong say in how the municipality starts to focus more on innovation and startups. Would you say that now the municipality has a broader vision about how to support startups, or is that still kind of a 1 or 2 person dedicated work to put it on the map, or is it, is it broader known?
Yeah, the road is not like always straight. Even if we, as me or some of my colleagues, we see the vision where we want to be also as a Riga as a startup hub, and we saw that 88% of startups are in Riga. So we want to foster the community here and help. Yet, of course, saying that doesn't mean that things start to happen as day one. But I want to say that year after year, with every budget, with the new programs we are launching, we are getting ahead, and we understand that on our side, we need also people, not only politically, who are interested in startup community to foster, because as you hear and follow politics, things are changing. One day you are in, one day you are out. But that's why for us and for me it's important that our departments, or in this case we have 2 departments. One is our city development department, which works more with innovations and smart city solutions and make the change that the cities start to be more innovative or client for innovations on one hand. On the other hand, the Riga Tourism and Investment Agency, Riga, we want to build the internal team who understands the startup needs, startup ecosystem needs, and then come to politicians and say, well, this is what we need, this is a budget, let's get it through. So not only, because then it will be sustainable, it will not be reliable only on 1 or 2 politicians, but also on the internal culture who understands, who listens, who meet with the startup community on regular basis, and then come to the politicians with ideas, okay, let's do this or that. So this is, I think now, after 3 years, we are already, I see this theme, and now I'm very sure that this theme will bring again us ahead. So this is like a step-by-step work towards that goal.
Thank you. I really like how you formulated that it's not about bringing up something with the government and then hoping that they will get it. It's a year-long work where you kind of put it on the map all the time and try to make it sustainable and topical every year. And so my question is actually to Līva. You've been on the Startup Association board a couple of years ago, and if I'm not mistaken, you were also on the board when the first initial memorandum of understanding was signed with the Ministry of Economics. I think it was back in 2018, 2019. So how do you notice, looking back and how it is now, has there been a clearer vision from the ministry side and more focused on startups?
First of all, I wanted to say that when we look at the Riga city, the change has been obviously huge. It's light years ahead from what was there before. So there's like, if before there wasn't even a discussion or a conversation with the city on supporting startups, I think right now we are light years ahead, and maybe it's also an example on how it should be in other state organizations. On a government level, to be completely honest, I think the situation has gotten worse in the past few years. We don't see, even though, and it's a good question in terms of the vision, because in terms of vision, we know that what's written in all of the documents, and we know that it's there. But in practice, we see that I think what is happening is probably a lot less than maybe was happening, or the drive to do something in this area is maybe a lot less. And what we see that the people who understand and who want to drive this forward, they're still there, but they don't have the support on the government level. And this is maybe something that is the hardest maybe for me to understand, because you know how economy works. There's the budget, and there are the sides who ask for money and who will always be the side who spends for, like, we have to spend for health and you have to spend for education. At the same time, there's the side of the entrepreneurship side. That will be the side who will give you money to spend. So there should be a long-term strategy on how to make sure you have more money to spend in the long term. And startups are just a part of that, but we don't see, even in a bigger picture, I will be honest, I don't see that happening. These long-term initiatives to make sure that we have more companies, more startups, which will lead to more taxes in our budget. I'm not sure why there isn't this understanding on that level. I'm not sure that having one ambassador will solve that. What we see from the inside quite a lot is that, yeah, there are people who understand they don't get a support on a government level to make these changes happen, and that's not very fortunate. Like Ernest said at the beginning, there was quite a lot to do on our own. And the startup community, I think, is absolutely amazing in a sense that there are a lot of gaps that the community fills in on their own. We see that there is an issue of visibility in the media or visibility in terms of foreign investors, and that's a gap that TechChill tries to fill, or there's a gap that Tech Hub fills in terms of startup house, or in STEM education that Riga Tech Girls does, or in angel investment, or these friends and fools. That's how Bad Ideas was built. And there are a lot of these gaps that we can fill in as a community, and we see that is already happening. At the same time, there are a lot of very, very important elements that we cannot do as a community, and we will never be able to do. We will never be able to make sure that we have STEM education in schools or in regions. And we will never be able to make sure that the laws and regulations in terms of taxes are ones that are supportive for startups. This is the role that only government can play, and only the state can change, and their role there is very, very crucial. And quite often it's not about the money or funding, it's quite often only about understanding why this is an investment into their own future.
Thank you. And a question to Tuomas. You've been on the Startup Association board, previous association's board, and I would say you were one of the trailblazers to get a significant document approved, which was the collaboration, the strategy together with the Ministry of Economics, Līva, on what are the things that we want to achieve together, and kind of breaking down an action plan, which already means that we have sort of a more aligned vision. But going back to the process, which admittedly did take about 2 years to complete, in your experience, what was the motivation, and what was it that pushed the document to go ahead? Was that a vision that we were trying to reach, or was that just the emphasis of specific people to go ahead and do this? Kind of what was the driving force behind this?
Yes, so if I have to subjectively evaluate that period, I would say a lot of that happened due to a handful of crazy people within the ecosystem that had just, gone through their separate experiences and seen how doing certain things bring close to zero benefit to themselves, but that enables the next generation of founders or similar stakeholders to do better, to get to the next stage easier. And I'm probably going to be repeating a lot of stuff that the others here just said, but important thing that is still missing is, I would say, two things. Number one, clear understanding it is a two-way street, because in my experience, a lot of times it was like, again, you're coming asking for something and you're not the only ones. There's like, I don't know, dozens of other ecosystem stakeholders, organizations, whatever. And this is something that where I think we've done a lot of progress as an ecosystem in the last several years, that we've been able to have our fights internally, have our differences come together back, and then this is like all credit to Olga and the team for keeping this ball rolling and getting a few meters ahead with every next iteration. But the other thing, which might be the biggest challenge, is mentality. So as the president, which hopefully comes tonight, as Olga mentioned, said in one of his first interviews, his first kind of finding by looking at Latvian state system from a bit different angle is that we have a lot of controllers and then people saying you cannot do this or that or something else, and we have a relatively small proportion of doers, people who are, get things done and figure it out later. Of course, in private sector is much easier to be said and done than it's in public sector. But still, the two key aspects that still have a lot of improvement ahead are communication and speed of execution. This is something that is really symbolic for startups as a whole, as a being. And then this is, of course, unfortunately, and it's not only the case of Latvia, but in many countries in the world, it's exact opposite of how the state system runs. So figuring out how to cut corners, maybe make an exception with some dedicated organization that is built differently, has different mentality, and here we again have a pretty solid example in Riga municipality. It's not an easy mission, but again, if we would have this champion who understands we don't have much lower to fall, but we have a lot where to gain in terms of startup support and enablement for a country, all of these things I'm talking about and many others would just click way faster and with less turbulence.
I will just add that I just told Inese an example of last week that it's not always about, cutting corners or making exceptions. So last week we reached out over WhatsApp to Riga City Council because we needed a recommendation letter, and they wrote it in a day. They can, like as an institution, they have the full rights to respond to me in 30 days. So it's not about cutting corners. It's about being fast, if you can be fast, and doing what is needed and knowing why you're doing that and what is important.
Okay, thank you. This brings us to a more practical part of, one thing is to have a vision, which on some level I think we're starting to shape a bit more, but there's never a point in having a vision if you don't have the strategy / an action plan to actually work on it, to achieve it. And you've all been at different levels, municipal, governmental, work groups. You've been a part of building those strategies and kind of putting together, the plan of what do we have to do to achieve that, the grand vision. My question is a bit, okay, let's phrase it this way. When you want to improve something, you have to reflect on how you did things in the past and see what you can improve moving forward. And I think, Tom, you kind of touched upon this already a bit, but in your experience, how much, when different entities collaborate to build a strategy, how much do we reflect on what worked previously and what didn't work? So how do we evaluate what to do better moving forward? And that's a question to all of you. You can take a second if you need to think.
Maybe I can jump in on this real quick. So one specific problem in the case of Latvia, where looking back at how those things were done differently is not, for me personally, absolute best approaches, because there is a high rotation in just about every organization that is like key in an ecosystem, which is not, well, let's face it, profit-driven. And this is a side note, a big problem, that a lot of these organizations that do amazing things, like Ernests mentioned, like 200K per year support, maybe the number is higher, most likely it is, because there are some other projects as well, but let's think objectively. What TechChill now is doing, they're bringing like around 2,000 attendees, most of which are international, to Riga for 2 days. In like 1 or 2 days, in hotels, flights, food, and entertainment, that money is coming back with a pretty decent surplus into the Riga's and Latvia's economy, right? So this is, you know, some organizations have pretty stable foundation in terms of team, but like we see Startin and many others, they have this big rotation. So, and because all of the people doing job are doing it for free essentially at the board level. So I would say, not looking back at like 2 or 3 years ago, but Ernests is not going to be a fan of this. He doesn't like to compare us to somebody else, God forbid Estonia, but still, we have those good case studies and examples to look at. It doesn't cost a fortune to be able to put people with relevant experience and the right attitude in that connecting phase to really facilitate better communication and thought exchange between the two sides, which is in this case ecosystem and the governmental level, because this is fundamentally the main problem. There are people that care about this, there are people that are interested in this, but just the dialogue is miles away from where it should be.
Inese, your thoughts maybe?
Yeah, my thoughts around it, and Tom said the word speed, and that is the thing what is like, I was saying like, oh yes, in 3 years we have achieved this and that, and we will definitely achieve more in Riga City Council in coming years, and reflecting to like time before 3 years, it might sound, okay, well, we have done a good job, but if I would think of coming from the business sector, I think it's too slow. And that's many things like what you also came with your ideas, or what jobs need to be done around these 10 points from your workshop. I see that some of at least 3 points Riga City Council can move forward and we can speed up things. But again, if I reflect to my own daily job, where I have on my table maybe 20 different topics, out of which one is also startup and innovation topic, then it needs to kind of on a regular basis come up higher so that I can speed and remember to speed it up, because if I don't speed it up, then it will take very long time to get going. So from my own personal reflection, I think just need to speed up things, because things take too long time, unfortunately, not only in this area, but in other areas as well.
Līva? Yeah.
I think I can just maybe repeat already what I said, that if one of the crucial problems on building out strategies is that at the end of the day, we're quite often writing a strategy for someone else who is not here. So we can write whatever we want, but again, you know, it's not strategy, it's just hope. We can say that we want to have, you know, coding in schools, or we want to have a better immigration law, but that's not a strategy, that's basically a letter on what we wish for. So that's, I think it's nice that we, and it's a great move forward, that we had this workshop being clear that what we are workshopping last week are things we want to go to the government and ask from them. This is what we are expecting, and then there is quite another strategy on what the community can do on their own side. But if I have to mention one thing, it's also the same thing, that what I wish for is for the government to have a better understanding on what is one-way spending and what is on investment. And if the government is talking about, you know, structural transformation of the economy and how it works, if they actually thought about it in a long-term process to understand what are our goals and what is our way on how to achieve it, I think it would be quite a logical step that at that point, the startup ecosystem would not be in the position of asking for some money. They would be a partner on getting that future return on investment from the state. And we are not there yet.
Yeah, I usually drop some bombs. I think we have to get serious. I think that's the step one. The agenda for this government, which is still working, right? Transformation of economy, and the startups, of course, should kind of be there. If we want to do something else, something new, that's exactly what startups do. We try to change the world, we take risks. And as I asked to raise hands, maybe now there are more hands, maybe people have appeared, but if we talk about the change and transformation of economy and government is represented by 3 hands in this forum, well, that's not serious. That's just not skin in the game. That's simply, yeah, well, that was cute. Startups are cool, but I have something else much more interesting on the agenda. And that goes through every layer of decision making. Having more skin in the game, having long-term strategies and people who go through that. Not like at TechChill, we have this experience where we work with a person at the Līva, we prove our case, and then months later we receive a letter that, yeah, I'm leaving. And then there's the new person, and they are like, hey, TechChill, I have heard that you're pretty cool. And we're like, yeah, let's do something together. And then we kind of go on and on. But there is no seriousness. It's like this game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings up another topic of how the rotation that happens on all sides, but specifically on the government side, that definitely has an impact on how quick things happen. And you can definitely get, from the ecosystem side, you can get tired explaining to every second, third new person in the government what is up and why this sector is important. But I think one thing that we will have to continue doing is inviting more and more government sector people to join these kind of events, so they can see that it's not just fun and having beers, but we're actually seriously contributing to the economy, and there's a lot of room for growth. We've touched upon a lot about the vision, a bit about the strategic part, but what I've at least noticed is on the government side, we do like to put together large strategies which include everything, and they can be 10-year plans, and we will do whatnot, and it's going to be grand. But if we compare that to startups never put, they do put, of course, they have a vision, but they never put a 5-year plan, kind of a 5-year action plan on what they will do. Startups have maybe a year, 1.5-year strategy with quarterly goals of what they want to achieve. And so they kind of react to any issues much quicker, and they adjust their strategy as they go, while on the government side, we're kind of stuck with longer strategies, and sometimes to act upon something, we have to wait for a new large strategy to appear. My question is to Inese. If we were to focus on solving specific problems in the sector without having the need to blow up a huge strategy, let's say we have an issue on the legislative level or that needs a lot of political support, what are some practical ways that we can work to get this through much quicker?
Yes, so my advice would be, and Ernests, you're right, you need to be persistent and not give up because people are changing. But then, again, for the political legislation to be changed, or of course, you should, and you are inviting people to join events like this to bring up awareness. But of course, if Muhammad is not going to the hill, you should go to the Muhammad. And then, what would be my way of approaching? I would definitely knock on the doors on all political parties, and on two levels. One would be on the level on Parliament, because all of the councillors are having their weekly meetings, and you can knock on the door and say, well, this is very interesting for startup ecosystem. We want to show you numbers. We want to show you exact 3 things that need to be done, and you need to tell what should be done, because people who are elected people, some of them are professionals from one area, some are professionals from other, and some are just enthusiasts, or I don't know why they are in politics, but they are very political elected people are as a reflection of our society. As our society is, that's the same reflection in the parliament. And so just like you go on the street and you would ask an average person about the startup, and you will see very random answers, the same in the parliament. So what's your role would be to educate them and to explain and show them numbers, and then knock on the doors on each, like now it will be probably 3 political parties, on all political kind of their parliament members in parliament, and then another is a board, because there's all the political parties has their board and board meetings, and knock also on those doors, because not always the same people are on the same level. And I'm sure that in each of them, you will find people who understand the value of startups and kind of will remember your pain further. But then it's not enough. With one time, you need to kind of understand who is running this commission of this legislation change, and work with that person, like, okay, well, when it will be taking on the board. And I think another thing, of course, what you have done already, but just to say that it's worth to do it again and again, is to invite or to go to the Prime Minister and bring it on the Prime Minister level, because Prime Minister is the head of all ministers, and he or she also can influence agenda. So I think, and as a startup association, I think you are already doing a great job. You have data, you have a community, you just be knocking on the, not heaven's doors, but the political party's doors. And you will knock and the doors will open, Ernest, I'm sure.
Okay, so knocking on heaven's doors, we will persistently continue definitely to do that. To have a more kind of specific things that we want to work on. Ernest, Līva, Toms, you were at the workshop last week, and I would like to hear your thoughts about 1 to 2 things that you discussed, then what you think should be a priority for us. Yeah, what are the things with which we have to go and knock on those doors to improve the situation?
Can I maybe follow up on the previous question first about the strategy?
Yes.
I think it was interesting to mention that the government writes their declarations and strategies in a different way than startups do. But I think the problem isn't that they're long-term, because if you would look at a strategy that was written 5 years ago, it would probably still be true, because the government usually writes their strategies in verbs. They say that our strategy is to support, to facilitate, to expand, So there are a lot of verbs, and the verbs aren't very measurable. This is something that a startup would never do. A startup would write a strategy in nouns and numbers. This is what we want to have in a year. In a year, we want to have 100 more startups registered. If this was something that was written in a strategy, then the problem that Ernests mentioned of this rotation would disappear. The problem with getting data would disappear because once you have a measurable number in a strategy, you need data to measure it. And if we had that, I think that would solve a lot of things. And even though I would also love to have more government people at events, I think at the end of the day, all you need is maybe a bit of statistics and an Excel sheet. You don't have to come to the event to see that startups paid 200 million in salary taxes in Estonia last year. How much do we need to spend and invest to make sure that in a few years we can get 200 million salary taxes from startups? What we have to do. And you don't need to go to an event to understand numbers, if that's your thing. So that's what I hope to see more. Hopefully the next strategy that we will have next week will have more of that.
Thank you. And then going back to the question about the 1-2 things the practical things that we should improve and knock on doors about, what would you say those are? Ernest, maybe we can start from you.
I think it's, I approach this as a sales process. We have to make our customer clear and give some value proposition. And as a society, and as Līva already mentioned, well, the vision is something that we want. What we want Latvia to be in 10 years, we want it to be prosperous and innovative, and that we create stuff, and this is a place where people want to live, right? Yeah? Yeah! Now the vision is out, like, yeah, everyone's cheering, let's do that. And my take was, we have been focusing too much on the sales pipeline at the end, which is how many unicorns we want. And then it's like, 3, 5, 2025, 2027. And that's like, okay, that's a cool story, bro, but what's the real action? And I think we have to focus more on the beginning, where there's education, there's cultural things that we have to promote. Entrepreneurship, we have to work on education, and there are really like practical steps there. Imagine having a clear statement from the government that in every local center there has to be an opportunity for the kid to go and learn coding. That's it. Like, here's one really practical thing. There has to be a financing which is up to 20K, which is accessible to the founder who just wants to start his own business, and that's in the form of soft loan, for example. That fills in the gap with the money. And those things don't cost that much, but those are really practical things to kickstart that unicorn generation, a framework. And I think we have to think more in the terms of frameworks rather than how many unicorns in how many years we want to see. That's the end, that's the outcome. We have to focus more on how those things are born, how that thing happens. And it's not about having an agreement with government that in 2027 we're going to have such an employment and 5 unicorns, and everyone is super happy.
Very good point, and I'll just quickly add, when you hear some people say, oh, we need 5 unicorns in 5 years, I don't think a lot of people know how really freaking hard it is to build a unicorn. I haven't built one, but but still, just seeing how the process goes, it's really, really hard, and it's very unique for every single startup. So, as you say, yeah, focusing on the beginning, on putting in the groundwork is really crucial. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Yes, so the two things to highlight would be, number one, close to nothing that the government or the country will do today will help us to reach even one new unicorn by 2030 or sooner. So this is, again, it's all interconnected with this vision and then an understanding that the names that have made it to a certain level in the Latvian startup ecosystem today or in the past few years, they have white-knuckled it. They have hustled through the way and then looked at some other examples or just have been kind of built different. But the input from the government support side has been rather limited, and unfortunately, it can change only marginally in the next couple of years. So this is closely related to what Ernests already talked about. Thinking not what can we do to get 5 new unicorns in the year after next, but what can we do to change the foundation? Do we really believe that next 10 billion added to our GDP in the next decade will come from 124 art schools or some other extracurricular activities, or we should take an eagle-eyed view on how the world is developing? And it's undeniable, it's inevitable that the world is becoming more technological, so it's kind of innovate or die situation. And what have we really done at the state level to practically react to this shift of paradigm? And the other thing, which is much more concrete and in the same lines with a lot of things I pointed out already before, it's, again, thinking a bit from the startup perspective, talk to your users. So we know for a fact that in Latvian Investment Development Agency, we have a whole team dedicated to startups, and I'm happy to see that they've been more proactive from their side, supporting some events. But let's play to our strengths in this case. We have a tight-knit, small community, probably less than 50 startups that have annual turnover over 1 million euros. It literally takes 1 hour per week in a year to get those founders or some other key people from that company to one coffee or one lunch per year, ask them questions, understand what are the challenges they're facing, what are the actual things we can help you now or maybe next year, what you envision, not in 5, not in 10 years, because they don't want to be in that position in 10 years. They want to build a company, exit it, make money, and then live happily ever after. And this would automatically resolve the situation that you're talking about, that ecosystem is talking in one language and then the government or ministry needs some 50-page Excel or something. This chain link in between has to be the one taking the inputs from both sides and building the outcome that is commonly understood by both parties. Because it's not going to be the government suddenly is going to start talking startup language or vice versa. We have to pragmatically approach the missing link in between and take clear, rather straightforward actions which have a lot to do about communication.
I will mention maybe 2 things that I would like to see from the state. Both of them cost close to 0. One of the things that we talked a lot about in this workshop is about STEM education. And since I have kids, this is a topic that just kind of makes me crazy. I have 2 of my kids, they go to school. They go to different schools, but both of those schools are one of the largest schools in Riga. Both of those schools have around 20 or 30 municipality financed extracurricular activities. 0 of those are STEM. And this is something that I'm talking about this to different people. I've talked about this in municipality. There is funding for those extracurricular activities. There is opportunity. We have a lot of these STEM schools that I pay for, which is fine. At the same time, there are a lot of people who cannot pay for that. So this becomes an exclusive activity. So this is like being STEM educated is currently what we are doing as a state. We are basically creating a kind of a social class that can afford to be educated in technology, which is, I think, the absolutely opposite of where we should be going. Because this is a change that would cost, I think, close to nothing, at least for Riga. Of course, what Ernests mentioned about these regional centers, that would cost, but at the same time, this is peanuts, like you said, in terms of investment in the future. And the second thing is talent, being open to highly skilled talent from other countries. Obviously, this is kind of a political issue, not a funding issue. And this is one of those examples where I think the government chooses to ignore the problem because it's just too difficult. So we have these parties who don't want to talk about immigration because it's too difficult. So we will ignore this. And just not talk about this. And this has been going on for at least a decade or more. We all know it's an elephant in the room. We know we need people from outside. We need more founders. We need more talent. We need more developers. We need them. We will not be able to grow without them. At the same time, this is standing on the shelf, and we are not talking about this and just ignoring the problem and hoping I will get re-elected to the next Saeim, and then maybe without talking about this. And these are problems that only, in difference to some other issues, these are problems that only the government can solve. This is something we cannot do as a community on our own.
Thank you so much for all the comments. There's quite a few reflections I have in mind, but just to sort of sum it up, because I'd like to leave some time for questions as well. So one of the things is a cultural shift, a shift in your mindset, that we have to think about innovation and STEM as a core thing that we have to emphasize as the country grows, and where we put the resources in and what we kind of develop further. And the second thing is, which I really liked, and we're a really small nation and we don't maybe use it as much as we could. I mean, any politician could call any of us. We can get each other's numbers through one person. We know everyone in Latvia through 1 to 2 people. So anyone can ask, what are the things that need to be solved? What is it that we can improve? And it shouldn't be as complicated or time-consuming as it sometimes turns out to be. So working on improving the communication with all sides and really reducing that bureaucracy as much as possible, because we all have the same vision. We do want the same prosperity and growth for our nation. And I think that's a valuable point to end on this discussion. I'd love to hear any questions maybe from the audience or comments. You can also share your comments and thoughts.
There's one.
Thank you. My name is Max. I'm working on a startup myself in the EdTech technology, and I wanted to get back to some practical side of the question. So we all know that the unicorns are not born from the rainbow, and they need to grow, and first of all, they are some kind of ugly horses that you need to raise up. And you already got some startups in the community that are struggling to increase their turnover. So what are immediate steps, like putting yourself in their shoes? What would you be beneficial from having at your time when you were starting business to get to the next level, to start earning, maybe maybe developing legal frameworks, maybe like getting some employees, maybe finding some affordable workforce? Like, what are immediate steps to help the current community to grow?
Okay, the question is, sorry, I'll just quickly summarize. So the question is, before we grow into a unicorn, there is an ugly horse that we have to improve. What are the practical steps that we can do to help current startups? So for example, how to help them increase their turnover and how to make sure that they properly grow. What would be your suggestion on immediate things we could improve?
Well, ask them.
Fair.
Ask those startups, how can government help at the current stage?
Maybe I can just add, not being a startup, but being also in my previous life an entrepreneur, I would also reach for a mentor and find the person I can chat on a monthly or a bi-monthly basis on my development. It definitely helps. And from the city side, I think you mentioned education technologies, yes? So I would gather around other edtech companies, and then as you are maybe 3, 4, or 5, you already are as a small community, and you can approach easy in education ministry or Riga or other city councils saying, hey, well, these are the new technologies, we want you to be testing this and start this conversation with your clients if they are from the government or the city or municipality level. So, but it would be easier to do it together with others, because usually when one company approaches us, for us it's very difficult to kind of start to think how we can help this one particular company, because then somebody else will say that, well, you are helping your friends because everyone is just one call away from you in Latvia. So always it's good to be as a group, as a small cluster. And for example, health technology companies, health tech, they have been doing also a great job, a small cluster. And then we start to push on our hospitals, so how you can cooperate and what are the needs, and then bring them closer. And as a cluster, I think it gets easier.
I could quickly add 2 more things. So sales is very specific, obviously, to startups, but 2 things that we continue to do and should be doing, I think, even more, is having workshops where other startups can share their experience, how they find the product market fit and how they sort of grow into it. And the second thing is the government will enable you to grow, but they won't grow it for you. So in the sense, a good thing to always use is definitely the startup law, which saves you some cash on employees, and that might free up some budget for, I don't know, marketing activities or whatever else you need to grow those sales. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay. If there are no questions, we are super on time. Then thank you all dear panelists for this amazing discussion, and thank you all for listening to it. And yeah, we'll give back the floor to Olga.
Thank you.